Hello, welcome to the prediction video for UFC 213. This will take place July 8th in Nevada, Las Vegas. This is also known as UFC International Fight Week. Originally, this was going to be headlined by Cody Garbrandt against TJ Dillashaw. They've been the coaches on the season Ultimate Fighter 25 Redemption. And obviously Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko. So when Garbrandt and Dillashaw fell out due to Garbrandt's back injury, Nunes Shevchenko got bumped up to the main event, with the new co-main event being Robert Whittaker against Yoel Romero for the interim middleweight title. Also on the card, it's a pretty stacked card as well. Fabricio Werdum against Alistair Overeem. They're 1-1 in their series, so this will be the rubber stamp. Robbie Lawler takes on Donald Cerrone in what is bound to be a great match. Anthony Pettis is up against Jim Miller. We have Travis Brown against Oleksiy Oleinik. Curtis Blaydes goes up against Daniel Omielanczuk. Thiago Santos will face Gerard Meerschaert. And Jordan Mein will face Belal Muhammad. So, let's get into the fights. Okay, so Jordan Mein against Belal Muhammad. Jordan Mein is 29-11, so 40 professional fights against Belal Muhammad, who's 11-2. Now Belal Muhammad is 2-2 in the UFC, but he's going up against a guy who's got 16 KOs. And even though Jordan Main's lost his last two, I fancy that he's going to get the win here by TKO. So I expect fireworks to be going off in the first bout. Then Thiago Santos, 14-5 with 9 TKO wins, goes up against GM, who's 26-8. He's never been TKO'd. He has 9 wins by submission and 7 defeats by submission. He's currently on a 7-fight win streak, and I think the telling match in these guys' history is Thiago Santos' match against Eric Spicely that he lost to a rear naked choke. And because of that, I'm going to pick GM to win by submission. Next up, we have another interesting one, striker against somewhat of a more of a grappler, let's say. Curtis Blaydes, who's 7-1. All his fights have been decided via TKO, and his only loss is to Ngannou. Going up against Polish mainstay Daniel Omielanczuk, who's 19-7-1. Never been TKO'd. He's lost his last two. I'm going to say that this one goes all the way. And I think that Omielanczuk is probably going to look better later in the fight, but I expect both guys to be pretty tired. However, I think Curtis Blaydes will probably start very well. I think he'll dominate the first round, maybe rock Omielanczuk, and it may be enough to take the second. I think Omielanczuk will win the third, but it just depends what happens in that second round. So I'm going to go with Blaydes by decision. Next up, Travis Brown, 18-6-1. The 6'7" monster. He used to be the future of the heavyweight division. And now he's the future Mr. Ronda Rousey. He's lost 5 of his last 7. 4 of his losses have come via TKO. And he goes up against 6'1" Oleinik, who has won 12 of his last 13. Of his 51 wins, 41 are via submission. He's got 10 defeats and 1 draw. If this was the whole old Hapa, you would definitely pick him to win this. But I don't know where his head's at. I don't know where his training's at. I think he's going to suffer his first submission defeat to 0-0. Yeah. I don't know what to say about Travis Brown. This is the epitome of talent lost. Next up, though, a resurgent Anthony Pettis, who's 19-6, going up against Jim Miller, 28-9. Now, surprisingly, this is a battle of the submissions. Pettis has won 9 of his fights via submission. And the Miller has won 14. Miller has 10 decision wins, and he has lost 6 of 9 via decision. Pettis has lost 5-6 via decision, and he's lost 4 of his last 5. They have a lot of common opponents, such as Joe Lozan, Donald Cerrone, Benson Henderson. I think Jim Miller is very, very competent everywhere. I would say Anthony Pettis is a more flashy striker. And if I'm pushed, I think Pettis is maybe a little bit more creative with his submissions. I think Pettis' submission game is really underrated. Now, Jim Miller has a lot of ability to pressure, and I think one fight in Pettis' history that is very telling for me was when he faced Gilbert Melendez. And now I'm not saying that Gilbert Melendez and Jim Miller are exactly the same fighter or something, but I think there's a lot of similarities there, and there's enough there for me to say that Pettis handled Melendez well. And if he can do the same to Jim Miller, I expect the same result. I don't know, let's say Pettis wins this one by decision. Then we're getting on to the real superstar card, and don't get me wrong, I think a lot of the fights so far we've talked about are very, very good, but Robbie Lawler versus Donald Cerrone, if we went back a year, this could have headlined a card and sold very, very well, in my opinion. Now, I don't think any less of these two guys. Robbie Lawler's moved camps. People can speculate for whatever reason they want. Donald Cerrone is, a bit hit and miss. That's the way he's been a lot of his career. Cerrone has won 16 of his 32 victories via submission. A lot of people don't think about Cerrone as a submission artist, but yeah, it's only really recently that he's become, the rounded striker that you see. Robbie Lawler has won 20 of his wins via TKO. And I do feel that Cerrone is very, very susceptible to body shots, especially liver shots. I think Lawler will know that, and if they get into an exchange, Lawler will go to the body, probably open up Cerrone and win via TKO. Now, both guys really need a win if they want to start looking at the title pictures. I think they're probably a few fights away, maybe 2 fights away from getting a title shot, but a big win here for either guy. There's a lot of eyes on this card, and this is a big opportunity for either of them to leapfrog people and put themselves back in contention. Next up, who are we talking about? We are talking about the rubber match between Fabrizio Werdum and Alistair Overeem. So in the first fight, there was the submission victory to Werdum. The second was the decision to Alistair Overeem. What can we say? I mean, Werdum has been his own worst enemy as of late. When he won the title, I thought he was going to hold it for quite a while. But, the way that he lost to Stipe Miocic was ridiculous. That was all his own fault. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but he can stand and trade. He's a pretty good striker. Obviously, Alistair Overeem, very well-renowned striker, maybe one of the best heavyweight strikers that there has ever been, especially with the educated feet as well as the hands. But he's actually got 19 wins via submission. Now, the BJJ black belt Werdum has never been submitted, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. I don't think he's going to win this one via submission at all. His best chance is to win this via TKO. Now, if Werdum does something stupid, then it opens things up for Overeem. They've both got KO'd by Stipe. They both KO'd Mark Hunt with knees, and they both beat Roy Nelson via decision. So, they've had a lot of common opponents, and we can see how well they match up against those guys. I think if Werdum had his head screwed on right, he could beat Overeem. He could take him in deep waters and beat him. But Overeem's had a lot of problems out of the cage with the UFC, with his attitude. I don't know how much he's got left to give or whether he's just fighting out his contract. So I'm going to pick Reem to win the rubber match via TKO. Then we get onto the co-main event of the evening, the interim middleweight championship. And wow, I don't know what to say. Robert Whittaker has stealthed in there. And it's a 7-fight win streak. So, you know, the New Zealander or Aussie, depending on who you talk to, is certainly deserving of his shot. Romero, to his credit, is on an 8-fight win streak. Only victories in the UFC. He's won 10 of his 12 via TKO. And his last loss was back in 2011. Whatever people want to say about Yoel Romero, this guy is something of a freak athlete. You know, he's got power in those hands, and he's an amazing wrestler. He may be the best wrestler that's ever wrestled in the UFC. People used to go on about Chris Weidman's great wrestling, you know, pedigree, or you know, how good he looks. Yoel Romero is much better than Weidman, in my opinion. Now, Whittaker's last loss was to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and of his 18 victories, he's got 9 via TKO. So I don't think this one's going to go very far. I don't think it's going to get into the 5th round. If it does, I fancy Whittaker in the later rounds, but I think Yoel Romero finally wins his title and heads off for Bisping. And that takes us to yet another rematch in the main event. Amanda Leona Nunes, who's 14-4, going up against Valentina Shevchenko, 14-2, for the second time. Nunes won their first fight just over a year ago. I actually think that Leona has improved since then, where Shevchenko is good, but I've not really seen the same kind of forward movement in her game. Now, Shevchenko has won 6 of her victories via submission, but Leona only ever lost her debut. And she's actually won 10 by KO. So I think Leona is going to win this one via TKO and continue to rule atop the division. Now, UFC 213 International Fight Week. I think it's going to be great. I expect a big announcement in Fight Week. I think we're going to hear the Conor McGregor Mayweather is done. I think we're going to get the details for it that week. That's my big prediction for International Fight Week. I don't think any of the predictions I made are that controversial or that revelatory. You know, I don't think you're going to go away from this going, wow, I didn't imagine that. But yeah, the big one I think is going to be the Conor McGregor announcement. Let's hope they get that fight done, it gets done, and we can all move on. Like, subscribe, share, comment, you know, let me know what you think.